Well, I think we just had quite the impactful talk about what happens when we are putting things into our soils. We're going to wrap up this session about that true foundation of our earth. We have Tom Newmark, the founder of the Carbon Underground, finishing us up today.
Thank you very much. I'm co-founder, actually. Larry Copold in the back there is my co-founder, so I want to acknowledge him. I'm very pleased to be in this group. I look out and see an extraordinary array of scientific, environmental leaders, and I am honored to have been invited here. After my remarks, we'll see whether I'll ever be re-invited. I'm a stickler for nomenclature. I'm going to focus on some terminology. I'm going to take some cheap shots, and I'm going to offend some people, maybe even some of my colleagues here on the stage, and for that I make no apologies. In addition to being the co-founder of the Carbon Underground, in my past life, I was the president, CEO, and board chair of a dietary supplement company called New Chapter. And I started New Chapter in 1990. I didn't start New Chapter. I started at New Chapter in 1999. And Dr. John Fagan, who is here, will appreciate that one of the very first things I did when I joined New Chapter is talk to my colleagues there and to our supply chain, and I said, let's root out the heresy of GMOs in the supply chain of New Chapter. And frankly, a lot of the folks at the company didn't know what GMOs were. But I prevailed upon them, and they were an easy group to convince. They were very much aligned with the idea of genetic integrity, genetic purity, doing things naturally. So I remember calling up one of our contract manufacturers and saying, we need to make sure that there are no genetically modified ingredients anywhere in these products. And the response in 1999 was, huh? Excuse me? And I said, well, like, for example, are there any ingredients in our products that come from corn other than organic archival corn? And the answer was, no one's ever asked. No, we don't know. And I then said, well, let's say that New Chapter only wants to order archival non-GMO corn as a source for, in this case, the coating on the vitamin. And they said, well, we can do that, but it's going to cost you triple. And New Chapter's answer, my answer, was fine. And that's the type of thing that you can't pass along to the consumer, but you can sleep well at night. So I was very happy in 1999 to help introduce the concept of non-GMO ingredients in the natural product supply chain for dietary supplements. And thank you to John Fagan for introducing me to the concept in the first instance. Some few years later, I made the decision that I wanted New Chapter to be organic, that I wanted our products to be, in our case, we could never get to the certified organic level, but to be made with organic ingredients as verified by a third-party certifier, who happens to be in the second row, raise your hand, our first certifier. I'm seeing all these friends here. And it was not easy. And there were people in my company who said that I was going to destroy the company by forcing the company to be the first dietary supplement company to have its full line of vitamins and minerals certified as being made with organic ingredients. And my response to that was, let's party, let's do this. Let's be that first company to do that. And now I've either been retired from business or put out to pasture or a refugee from capitalism. But now I am the co-founder of the Carbon Underground, and my daughter, who is here at the show, is the Director of Sustainability at New Chapter. So from 1999 on, I was all about sustainability, and my daughter was all about sustainability, and I am here at this conference on sustainability to announce that it is such a 1999 concept. It's such a concept that we've got to go beyond. In fact, all apologies to iPhone, my esteemed colleague, to the Organic Consumers Association. I want to get beyond organics in this conversation because, frankly, even if the entire world's food supply were to shift over to organic production and textile as well as food, if it were to all go organic, but under the definition of organics as provided by the National Organic Program, it is not enough. It is simply going to be sustainable. And why is sustainable not enough? Well, okay, I read an article last week that said that we are putting calories of solar energy into the ocean every year equal to the amount of heat produced by 378 million Hiroshima bombs every year. So the oceans are heating up. We have 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere and rising. And my colleague, Larry Coppold, suggested a wonderful metaphor to help understand why that's not sustainable. Imagine a 400-pound patient going into the doctor's office and saying to the doctor, I can't move, I can't function, I'm in pain, my life expectancy is 0, I need your help. And the doctor, in a very sober, professional tone, says, I'm going to put you on a diet, and the diet will result in you gaining no more weight. We're going to sustain your weight. It's too late to talk about sustainability. Sustainability is over. It's 1999. We can't sustain a food supply, a textile supply, an industrial organization where we're already at 400 parts per million and counting. So let's by all means go solar, and let's have wind, and let's use all sorts of energy sources that are the cutting edge, and let's, turn off our lights and drive hybrids. But then let's ask the question, as Larry and I did, to a leader of the environmental movement. And by the way, Larry and I also wear other hats. I am proud to say that I'm chairperson of the Greenpeace Fund in the United States. So this applies to all environmental organizations. This is not just a question that was asked this night to Al Gore's Climate Reality Project leader, but we asked the question, what would happen if tomorrow all fossil fuel emissions, all anthropogenic sources of carbon were to stop tomorrow worldwide? Not one more molecule of CO2 would go in the atmosphere. What would happen to climate change? And the head of Al Gore's Climate Reality Project said, nothing, because it's already baked in. We already have 400 parts per million in the atmosphere. So to sustain 400 parts per million is a death sentence for our species and for much of life on the planet, certainly for the oceans, certainly for the oceans. So what we have to do is not sustain, not simply be organic, not simply be non-GMO, but we have to regenerate. Because we've lost 30 to 70% of the topsoil of our planet. It's already washed off into the oceans, are vaporized and oxidized and decomposed in the atmosphere. In fact, several hundred billion tons of the excess greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere came right from the soil. And that's the bad news. But the good news is they can go back. And I'm going to now, let's see if we have, tell you a little bit very quickly. How much time do I have? 0? Seriously? I have 0 time left? I have 0 time left. All right, well, I'm going to make this really fast. All of the CO2 that we have in the atmosphere, all the excess hundreds of billions of tons of CO2 that we have in the atmosphere that are incinerating the planet, denying our children their future, we can put that CO2 back in the ground using regenerative organic agriculture. And that's what we have to demand of this industry and of our entire supply chain for all the products in this industry. By all means, John, non-GMO. By all means, Ronnie and Andre, organic. By all means. But that's just where we start. Because if we don't actually put CO2 back in the soil using regenerative organic agriculture, then it's over and we should just party. We could say a prayer of mourning for the planet. Talking about our health of our children, frankly, I hate to say this, it doesn't matter when the entire ecosystem is the target of ecocide. So what we have to do, and I'm going to do this super quickly and not show any of my slides except one, is we have to use the type of organic agriculture and of grass-fed beef and dairy production. We have to use the type of organic methods of food and textile production that uses the power of photosynthesis, and all that green plants want to do is take the CO2 from the atmosphere and put it into their bodies and then release it through their roots out into the soil. That's all that plants want to do. They were born to do that. We just have got to get out of their way. We have to stop tilling the soil and breaking apart the soil and releasing the stored carbon into the atmosphere. And we have to stop killing the life force in the soil and the soil food web by the application of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. That's what we have to do. And I'm going to now demonstrate for you that by doing regenerative agricultural practices, we can actually reverse climate change. And you're missing all this cool stuff because of Andre. It took all my time. Okay. Part set?
Doesn't 0 time?
Right. It's timeless. So I was at a talk in Costa Rica about 2 weeks ago with Dr. Christine Jones from Australia, friend of Andre's. And she pointed out that there is a person who uses grass-fed organic means of managing livestock, who is able to sequester 9 tons of carbon per hectare per year. And by the way, that's not all that uncommon. There is a rancher in Mississippi who is able to do 30 tons of carbon sequestered per hectare per year. And there are ranchers and farmers all over the world. And if you want to read about it, Andre wrote a paper that was published by the United Nations Commission on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, in a body of papers called Wake Up Before It's Too Late in September of 2014. You should read what he wrote about and read what Rodale writes about in their white paper of farmers farming in a regenerative organic way, putting carbon back in the soil. And so take a look. Over a 10-year period, at that pace, we can sequester in the soils of just the grasslands of the planet 315 billion tons of carbon. And that converts, through the magic of chemistry, to such an enormous quantity of CO2 being removed from the atmosphere that we can, in short order, using regenerative organic agriculture, restore this planet to levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are actually lower than pre-industrial levels. And the world movement to do this, a movement that is led by the Organic Consumers Association and by IFOAM and by the Mercola organization and by, I'm happy to say, the Carbon Underground, that movement is getting this message out. And so what I would say to every food producer is, yes, are you non-GMO? Yes, are you organic? But are you putting carbon underground with every product that you are providing to my consumers? Thank you very much.